Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Ground and Pound podcast, the show where, as always, we're hitting you with the elbows of knowledge. And just like last week and the week before, I'm here with my co-host, Carlos. What's happening, Carlos?
Absolutely nothing, brother.
Absolutely nothing. And this Saturday, there is something taking place over at the O2 Arena. Leon Rocky Edwards taking on Sean Brady in the main event. And I got to admit, I'm pretty excited for this card. Not just because it's in my home nation, but just because of the fact that there are some pretty decent fights on this card. And I can't wait. I mean, I think the UFC's got this one down to a T. They changed the time from the last UK event, which I'm sure a lot of UK fans are happy about. And the Ground and Pound podcast is going to break the whole thing down for you, giving out not only some betting insight, but also our picks and our predictions for this entire card. What did you think about this card from top to bottom, Carlos? And how excited are you on a scale of 1 to 10?
On a scale of 1 to 10, I'll give myself, with a couple of these fighters on here, I'll say about a 7. There's a couple of interesting matchups that I like. This one's probably one of them is Nathaniel Wood versus Morgan Charrière. I kind of want to see who's going to win that. I've got my pick on that. I'm not sure how the outcome's going to go. Nathaniel Wood is a tough kid.
Yeah.
So Charrière, I think, is a lot bigger of an athlete, so it's going to be very, very difficult who pulls it out. Uh, what's his name? Lonnie Kavanagh.
Yeah.
I like what I see from him, and Felipe Dos Santos. He's got a ton of potential. His fight with Manel Kape was very impressive, but he's been kind of going win loss, win loss. But
Yeah.
I think he's got 1 win, 2 losses. So it's maybe the competition that he was fighting, because they were tough matchups. There's a couple fights that are close like that I'd like to see, and obviously the main event. I'm hoping Leon, you can pull it out of the fire. Just give it for us, man.
You know,
I love Leon.
Leon's definitely, I'm definitely excited to see if Leon can pull it out of the fire, son. But at the same time, also the people's main event, Molly McCann, lad. Meatball Molly McCann. Can't wait, lad, for Chanel. I'm excited to see that one. I also want to see if Nick Parkin can actually take on some real, someone real in the heavyweight division. I want to see how he does. And without further ado, you ready to get into it?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So first up, we have Kutateladze taking on Kia Fernandes, and I got a lot to say about this one. And to be honest with you, Garam to me has been a little bit of an underachiever so far in the UFC. And Garam, if you're unaware, I think that there was a lot of hype with him coming into the UFC as far as his upside and what people expected for him. And I think that's, to be fair, that's kind of built up from Khamzat Chimaev, right? Khamzat Chimaev got a lot of hype coming in. He was a guy that trained with Khamzat, so I think that's where obviously it's all come from. And he's been dropped in multiple fights now, so it's kind of hard to trust him in picking, and it makes it a little bit difficult for me to pick it in this fight. But a very good wrestler, very nice Muay Thai, decent striker, somebody who can really, really push a pace. And he actually did impress me in his last fight against Jordan Vucenic, where he was dropped early in that first round and was able to, grapple in the second round, grapple in the third round to win ultimately a decision. And he showed a lot of toughness in that fight. Fernandes, on the other hand, he trains over at Jose Aldo's gym over in Brazil, and he has really, really nice leg kicks. Obviously, he's got the master of low kicks to teach him over there in Jose Aldo. Rafael Estevam as well, who's obviously a great wrestler, and Mateus Nicolau, obviously he is still a ranked UFC fighter. I think he just got cut by the UFC, but again, decent fighter. I think Fernandes is fairly live in this fight, to be honest with you. I think that these odds should be much closer than what they are, especially considering how streaky Garam can be. Ultimately, I am going to pick Garam in this matchup. I do think that he should be the rightful favorite. I think he wrestles. I think the reason that this line is as big as it is, I think if Garam comes in and he gets cracked or he doesn't enjoy what's happening on the feet, he can change levels and he can really hold Fernandes down and control him. Fernandes' calf kicks obviously are a main weapon of his, and he also likes to fight at kicking range. I haven't seen too much in the way of his hands. I feel like he kind of wings punches. He doesn't throw a lot of straight shots, but ultimately I'm going to go with Garam here. I think he wrestles. I think he gets it done probably on the judges' scorecards, and I don't really think that the huge price tag of minus 450 or whatever it is valid. But I'm going with Guram in this one. Who you got, Carlos?
Well, with everything you just said, I ended up going with Guram as well. But I also wanted to go with Fernandes because I I also see the fact that I think out of the two of them, he's the harder hitting of the two.
Mm.
Granted, like he does loop a lot of his shots when he's throwing his punches. He does have hard kicks, and training where he does, I felt that maybe if it went to the ground, he's more of a submission threat than we know of. But a lot of those guys too that you named, they got some striking, and they're not really like big on getting it to the ground, get submission. Besides Nicolau, he'll take it to the ground a lot as well.
Mm.
Uh, I don't see his stand-up Garams as being impressive
Mm.
because he doesn't really look like he causes a threat on the feet. Wrestling, that's kind of what saved him against Vucenic, who's on this card as well, and that's somebody that I, really can't wait to see. I think he's got a lot of talent, and I thought that that fight was pretty damn close, but in favor of Vucenic. So Garam didn't really impress me in that one either. So with that said, I thought we had talked about it. The odds are a little crazy in this one, but
Yeah, yeah.
I'd say I'd nudge it in Garam's favor.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you keep Guram out of parlays this week, people. I think it's not necessarily a good look, but I think look for the Georgian to wrestle. I think that's definitely going to be where he's going to have success. And but keep an eye out for that calf kick. We've seen with Fernandes, he butchered the last opponent that he fought over in the Middle East. I forget the name of the gentleman he fought, but absolutely butchered his calf. So I think once Guram feels that calf kick, I think he goes right to the crotch sniffing. And next up, we have Nathan Fletcher taking on Colin Loughran. And I'm going to pass this one over to you first, Carlos. Who do you have in this matchup?
Okay, I'll start it out with saying who I got. I got Nathan Fletcher.
Mm.
I don't think he's the toughest, strongest fighter. I think was it Loughran?
Loughran.
Am I saying that right?
Yeah,
Loughran.
yeah.
I think Loughran is
There you
actually
go.
the tougher fighter. I was in quite the kerfuffle there trying to figure that out, and I got I got Loughran as one of the. He's a strong kid. He's very imposing, but he's very stiff on his feet,
Mm.
and I just feel that Fletcher's got a lot of upside if he can keep the fight standing. Even on the ground, I think he's a lot more fluid in his motions than Loughran, and I think he's causes more of a problem on the ground than you'd believe. I think he actually causes a little bit more problems on the feet based on his movement. He makes himself long by darting in and out sometimes, so that works in his favor. I see Loughran as kind of flat-footed, and he'll kind of stalk you, walk you down. So I'm taking Nathan Fletcher in this one.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm also going with Nathan Fletcher. Training over at Next Generation MMA over with Paddy the Batty Pimlet and Molly Meatball McCann, which is obviously she's on this card. So training with them. Paddy's obviously got a huge fight coming up with Michael Chandler, so you have to feel like, inspiring. He's training with Paddy to get him ready for that camp, which I like for Fletcher in this matchup. On top of that, obviously Molly training for a full fight camp as well for this particular card. So got great training partners, and obviously you know how the Scousers like to get down. That gym's doing fairly well at the moment, led by Paddy the Batty Pimlet. And I don't know if you actually know this, Carlos, but these two actually fought already on the amateur scene. This is actually a rematch. In the first fight, Fletcher took on Loughran in his first amateur fight, and he was able to win by unanimous decision. And I don't see a whole lot changing to me. I think Fletcher, to me, I didn't really rate him very highly after coming off the Ultimate Fighter. I think that was just because I hadn't necessarily seen enough from him. But one of the things that I liked when he fought against Riggy Zamantis, I believe it was, he likes to throw overhand rights to set up his takedowns. So when he likes to throw big punches, people believe obviously the takedowns are coming. They drop their hands. He lands the right hand, or he uses that and obviously to get the takedown himself and set up his strikes to his wrestling, which I really like. And to me, I just believe out of the two of them, he's going to have more volume on the feet. It's not to say that I think Loughran's necessarily a bad fighter. I just think that Loughran's level of competition is pretty poor. He does a lot of talking on Twitter, and when he gets into the cage, he just really kind of stands there and looks at his opponent, especially when he fought against Jake Hadley in his last fight. So it makes him pretty hard to trust there. He will just stand and not really throw in combinations and throw one at a time. And honestly, I think Fletcher here, I think he gets it done. I think if this is remotely close, I think Fletcher gets it, obviously being that he's from the UK as well. So conspiracy corners on Fletcher this week. And yeah, I like Fletcher to get it done for the Scousers. Let's have it, lad.
Maybe Loughran is a Scouser. Look at the size of that head. He's got a head like a fire hydrant, man. Look at that. It's like a pit bull. He is. I don't see anyone knocking him out, but he's a tough kid anyway. But
yeah, I was gonna lie. If you take anything away from this weekend, ladies and gentlemen, pay attention to Loughran's large bowling ball of a dome.
Yep, his poor mother.
And speaking of mama, we got Shauna Mama B Bannon. Thank you for that transition there, Carlos. Taking on Puja Tybura. And we're not going to spend too long on this one. As we all know, Aaron's extremely long and inspirational breakdowns of female MMA can be something that only, who am I kidding? This is a terrible fight. What are we doing? What are we honestly doing? How are these two in the UFC? Explain that to me, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to pick Shauna Bannon, purely because I think if this is close, I think the judges give it to Shauna Bannon because she's from Ireland. Both of them fight that like karate bullshit style where there's no damage being done and there's a lot of and not really a whole lot being done. To be perfectly honest with you, I don't understand how this is a UFC fight. They're both low level. They both don't hit very hard. The only thing I will say, if Puja ends up on the ground, she's probably getting submitted. Shauna Bannon does have a little bit of jiu-jitsu, but she has no means to actually get the fight to the ground. I'm just going to say Shauna Bannon purely because of the fact that she's, from the UK and that I reckon that the judges would probably give it to her if it's a close decision. But to be perfectly honest with you, I mean, I've watched multiple fights of both of these women now. Not only did I fall asleep, but at the same time, I don't think either of them won the fights that they were given. So Puja didn't win her last fight at all. She was beaten in that fight, and Shauna Bannon, she's just not impressed me since I've watched her enter the UFC. So, yeah, if there's a bathroom break on this card, it's definitely this one. Who you got in this one, Carlos?
Cold as ice. I went with Shauna Bannon. Puja's actually a little bit of a wild card because she does come out swinging heavy. She has hurt people in the past, in some of her past fights, and she's very quick. Shauna Bannon is, she's a little flat-footed, and she's very slow in comparison, but she does bring that extra element of being able to control her on the ground once it gets there. Problem is, how is it going to get there? Shauna's wrestling isn't that complete. She doesn't really have good trips, good throws, anything like that. I still went with Bannon because I feel somehow this is going to get to the ground. But yeah, that's who I got for it, Shauna Bannon.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is probably a lock for fight goes the distance. I don't think either of these women are getting a finish anytime soon. And this is definitely a fight where if you drank a little bit too much beer on a Saturday afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, it's a time to go and release that and release your bowels. So moving on. And next up, we have got Andrey Pulyaev taking on Christian Leroy Duncan, CLD. I'm going to kick this one off and just start off by saying Christian Leroy Duncan, if you guys didn't know, is supposedly an ex-basketball player or a high-level basketball player. And I don't see it. Let's hope that he picked the right career because so far in the UFC, he's kind of a little bit nonplussed. But I got to shout out Christian Leroy Duncan at the end of the day. I mean, he's UK fighter. He's doing what he's supposed to be doing in the UFC, 10-1. He did run into a little bit of adversity in his last fight against Gregory Rodriguez, getting out grappled. But I do like what I see on the feet from him. I like the speed that he has. He looks very athletic, so I can see why he was able to pursue a career like basketball before he got into MMA. But the level of competition that he's fought up until this point, it kind of concerns me because he's beaten guys in the UFC that aren't actually UFC level. Like Ribeiro is not UFC level. I believe he fought Dennis Tululan as well, not a UFC level guy. So we kind of don't really know what we're going to get from Christian Leroy Duncan at this point. I think he's more athletic than good. Whereas if you take Andrey Pulyaev making his UFC debut, of course, watching the Contender Series, I actually remember his performance on there. It was a little bit nonplus. I definitely think Christian Leroy Duncan's striking is definitely going to be faster and better than Pulyaev. And obviously, Pulyev's got that kind of Sambo background, which is where I think that he's going to try to take this fight. I think if Pulyaev doesn't wrestle, I think he's an idiot in this fight. With the Sambo experience and just seeing that Duncan just got taken down by Gregory Rodriguez in his last fight, I think he should grapple, but I think Duncan's going to learn from his mistakes in his last fight. I think he's going to be the much faster guy, and I think he'll probably find the chin of Pulyaev just because of the speed discrepancy between these two guys. So going to go for the hometown guy to get it done. CLD, don't make me look stupid, and anytime you want to play one-on-one, brother, I'm gonna whoop you 11-zip. So who you got in this one, Carlos?
Well, I went with Christian Leroy Duncan. I like the athleticism. I like how he's light on his feet. He's in and out. He, quick strikes. Takedown defense against Gregory Rodriguez. Gregory's a gorilla. He's going to get you down no matter what. Pulyaev, I think I think they're probably at the same level of striking. Sambo's a very good sport because it mixes striking with grappling, but they tend to be very good on the ground more so than on the feet. They're a little wilder. His punches come in a little bit straighter. His kicks aren't as wide, but I think Leroy is a little bit more, a little bit sharper on the feet when it comes to the actual movements, the motions of it. And I'm gonna go with Duncan only because I don't think Pulyaev can get this to the ground. I think Duncan's probably gonna. I think he sharpened a little bit of the takedown defense, and I hope he's been working a lot of get-ups as well.
Yeah, yeah. I know he does a little bit of training with Team Renegade with Leon Edwards and a few of those guys, Jai Herbert. So definitely a good camp to go to in terms of defending off the fence. But I'll be interested to see if Pulyaev does wrestle in this. I think he'll be stupid not to. And Christian Leroy Duncan's actually one of the bigger favorites. I think he might be the biggest favorite on the card. So I don't really see it myself, if I'm being honest with you. I think that Pulyaev could definitely wrestle him to a decision and ultimately win a decision. But I do think CLD pulls it out. So we'll see how it goes on Saturday. And next up, we have got Marcin Tybura taking on Mick Parkin. And I got to say, ladies and gentlemen, drop whatever you're doing right now and just look at this gentleman, Mick Parkin, okay? I want you to take a good look. This is the kind of guy that you'll see on a Sunday at your local pub or Saturday, maybe even on a Friday. And this gentleman just looks like he'd be just down in pints. And he just looks like a very jolly, happy fellow that, you'd see in any local pub over in the UK. And I'm interested to see how Mick does in this matchup. Obviously, training with Tom Aspinall. He's a guy who, he's been training with Tom for quite some time now, and I expect him to have shown improvements over time. And I think that he's very patient. He's very technical of a boxer on the feet. He doesn't necessarily ever get without himself. So he kind of stays within himself is what I mean. So he never tries to overthrow or overextend or do, come out crazy. He always sort of keeps a very slow and steady pace. So his cardio has never really been a factor in any of his fights purely because he tries to kind of be relaxed in there. And I think that that's purely because he's getting so many rounds in with such a high level heavyweight in Tom Aspinall that he's able to feel very relaxed in the cage, especially when fighting a guy in, 39 years old and Marcin Tybura, who's, experienced, but obviously somewhat slowing down. He's been knocked down and knocked out in a couple of his more recent fights. Showed some adversity when he fought against Denise in his last fight. He did get dropped in that fight and was able to get the ground game going and show a bit of veteran savvy. But I'm going to go with Mick Parkin here. I really like Mick here. He opened as the underdog. He's now actually been bet to the favorite. I really like it because although we haven't necessarily seen too much in the way of grappling from Mick, I believe if this fight stays on the feet, I don't really think Tybura is that live on the feet. I don't think he's that dangerous. And I think Mick is kind of one of these guys where he's going to gain so much experience from fighting and training with Tom Aspinall that he's going to look at this fight and say, hey, this guy's slow, he's old. Tom's going to be in his ear saying, hey, this is how you beat him, look out for this, etc., etc. So his gym and his camp is very familiar with Tybura, and I think if he keeps it on the feet, I think he'll have success. Obviously, Tybura, being that it's heavyweight, anyone's live to knock anybody out at any point. But yeah, I like Mick in this way, no matter where it goes. I don't think he'll get to the ground, but I think he can stay safe on the ground from Tybura. But yeah, I like Mick. I like him in a big way this week, and I hope he pulls it out for the UK lads. So, Carlos, who you got on this one?
Well, I ended up taking Mick Parkin. I thought pretty much the same thing that you thought is he's in a good gym. He's got good guys around him. Uh, Being a heavyweight, very hard to find good heavyweights to work out with
Mm.
and to get better. And right now, they got some guys in the gym that obviously they can benefit from each other. Tom Aspinall, I think, is probably the best guy you can find right now in MMA to train with. So that's a big plus. I think does he have the athleticism? Is he light on his feet? No, but he's I think he doesn't leave a lot of mistakes out on the table. Like he doesn't leave a lot of openings out for you. He
Mm.
doesn't rush in to do anything, and he's never too slow to get off on you as well. So he kind of I'd say has good timing for what his athleticism allows him to do. He's never going to try to outspeed you. He's not going to try to outtime you. He's not going to try to outquick you powerful. He's going to slowly grind you down, and it worked for him. So I took Parkin because, yeah, there's an age gap there. I get it, but he's pretty technical, and he always seems to be in pretty decent shape, gas wise. So I'm going with him.
Yeah, I do have to admit with Parkin, when he first came into the UFC, he did look a little bit like a lumbering heavyweight, and he doesn't move his head a whole lot. But what Carlos actually said there is so true, is that he doesn't leave a whole lot of openings and a whole lot of mistakes for his opponent to capitalize. And I think, to be honest with you, that's one of his best qualities, is that he doesn't try to be something he's not. You see some guys sometimes, they let their emotions get the better of them. They come out swinging in the first round and then they gas out, which is a main problem in heavyweight with sloppy sort of gassed out heavyweights going into round two. But Mick just fights at that same pace, and I like that steady Eddie. I hope he gets it done on Saturday, because he's definitely going to be somebody that I'm rooting for, and he'll crack into the top 15 as well. So UK heavyweights obviously on the map, and shout out to Tom Aspinall's gym for getting him there. And next up, we have Lona Kavanagh taking on Felipe dos Santos. And I'm going to pass this one over to you, Carlos. Who do you have in this one?
Oh, I like this kid. Is it Lonnie or Loner? Because I'm hearing a couple different
Lona
things. Is
Kavanagh.
why is Loner okay?
Yeah.
Well, whatever, Lonnie or Loner. I'm going to go with Loner. Kavanaugh. He's a good lad. He's very skilled. Uh, but so is Dos Santos. Dos Santos is a very impressive outing against Manel Cop. I thought that the respect that he got from Cop was pretty good, and the shots he was able to take was very impressive for your UFC debut. He had another loss. I can't remember exactly who it was to, but it was another top fighter as well. And there's really no shame in that. The problem is it the fact that he lost to two guys that were very good, or did he lose? Does he just can he not compete with those guys? And does Lona fall into that category of those guys that are skilled, that just have that little bit of edge over him? Lona's very calculated in how he moves, the openings he's looking for. He doesn't like to get into a firefight, but he likes to mix it up. Felipe wants you to get into a firefight with him, because that's going to leave an opening. He's got that old kind of shooter box stand-up style where he's going to throw punches pretty hard, not really set anything up, but hopes that just the impact is going to back you up, maybe make you think twice about coming in, and or possibly knock you out. I think Lona's a little bit more calculated. I think he's a little bit more technical on the ground and on the feet. The only thing that gets me is Dos Santos has got some pop that Lona's got to be pretty, he's got to stay sharp, because he did get hurt to the body in one of his fights. I can't remember the guy who he fought. Do you remember the name?
Um, no, I can't remember. I know it was over in the Asian card that they had.
Oh, Jose Ochoa.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And
Yeah.
that's who he got hurt to the body by. And Ochoa's not a big puncher, and you can hurt anybody to the body. You don't have to be a big puncher. You just got to hit him right on a good spot. And so that doesn't worry me too much. But if Ochoa's hurting you, I don't like the fact that Dos Santos is going to bring a little bit more pop and you're going to stand in front of him, because he does stand in front and he likes to slip some punches, likes to check some kicks and come in, close the distance. With that said, I will take Kavanagh, and I was going back and forth with this one because I thought that Dos Santos was a dog, but I finally made my choice. So
Yeah, Dos Santos is the dog, but I kind of feel like I wouldn't say the odds are. I think the odds are too wide in this matchup, if I'm being honest. And the reason for that is I do really like Kavanagh. I've been impressed with him since his UFC debut, since he was on Contender Series. He really impressed me. Just backing it up a little bit. Obviously, if people can see on the screen, Kavanagh does have the Chinese flag next to his name, and he is actually he has dual citizenship. So he has dual citizenship, being that I think his mum is from China and his dad is from the UK. So he will get the pop from the UK fans. He will have the UK fans on his side, and he does tend to claim a little bit more of his Chinese background. That's why they put him over there on the I believe it was the Singapore card originally for his UFC debut. And in that debut, he with the hands, he just didn't kind of let his punches go early in that round, and I think it kind of took him a while to build into that fight. I don't know if it was jet lag or whatever it was, but he took a little bit of while to get going. Once he did, his striking kind of showed tenfold that he has some skills. He's very athletic. On the Contender Series, when he knocked out his opponent, he did a backflip and landed in like the superhero pose, which was pretty badass. And I like the kid. I've been pretty high on the kid as far as his hand speed and his ability to kind of show on the feet just how much faster he is than his opponent. And we haven't seen too much in the way of his grappling. I think Dos Santos might try to exploit that in this matchup. But one thing I know about Dos Santos is that he has terrible takedown defense. At the moment in the UFC, he's 1-2. The one lone win that he did actually have was against my boy Victor Altamirano, and he got robbed in that fight. I think Victor Altamirano won that fight as almost a 3-1 underdog. And like I said, Santos has bad takedown defense, and I think on the feet sometimes he leaves his chin a little bit high. If Manel Kopp wasn't able to knock out Santos, I highly doubt that Kavanagh is going to be able to knock out Santos. But one thing I will say is I think on the feet, this could be, I don't know, 70-30 in favor of Kavanagh, but I think on the ground, if Kavanagh has any sort of decent ground game, I think that he can hold Santos down for all 3 rounds. So I like Kavanagh wherever the fight goes. I think Santos is always live, that he can crack. Those shoot-to-box guys, they can always find a way to win fights, as proven in the past. They can always be deadly off their back, but I think Kavanagh is going to be ready. And I just believe as well with the hometown on his side, I think that's going to be a big factor as far as motivation for him. And I like Kavanagh in this matchup. I've been pretty impressed with him, and I like what the UFC's doing. They're kind of building him in slowly but surely. They're not giving him too much too soon, and I like him in this matchup to get it done. And ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button. Obviously, the Ground and Pound podcast is breaking down all these cards for you, giving all of our betting insight, tips, and breakdowns. And if you haven't already, just put the kettle on, take a nice sip of a cup of tea. And we're going to talk about Jai Herbert taking on Chris Padilla. Taco Chris Padilla. I like to call him Chris Padilla.
Yep. Quesadillas.
Quesadillas, exactly. That's what it reminds me of. But it's taco. It's taco. I'm going to pass this one over to you, Carlos. Who do you have in this matchup? And do you prefer quesadillas or tacos? Just out of interest.
I love a good quesadilla, man, over tacos.
Quesadilla.
I understand Taco Tuesdays is pretty popular, but I'm a quesadilla guy.
Tuesday.
So, the one thing that made me, hesitate on this one was the fact that Jai Herbert has good movement. He's got good in and out, and he's very relaxed on his feet. And his strikes kind of come out of nowhere sometimes. They're very quick, very sharp. He doesn't throw a lot of sting on it. He just kind of flows into the next movement, which is a little bit more dangerous at times. That's how he was able to catch Mr. Tybura and light him up for a sec. But I had to go with Padilla, and the reason I ended up going with Padilla is the fact that I feel he just has that ability to find the way to win. He's not the best athlete. He's actually not even like the best fighter technically, but in a fight, he's going to find a way to be resilient. Now, he hasn't had to fight through a ton of adversity, but from what I've seen so far, like the matchups he's had have been pretty even, and he's came out on top. I actually think that Jai Herbert is a little bit more of a physically a tougher matchup. I just feel he's going to find a way to crack him or in the fight in some way. I do feel he's going to get a finish. I don't know why, but I feel like he's going to get a finish. Not because I got, images of Jai Herbert getting dropped by that right hook of Tybura, but I have a feeling that Padilla can find a way to get a finish.
Yeah, I've never been a huge Jai Herbert fan. Let me just start off by saying that, and it's nothing necessarily against him. He seems like a pretty likable guy, big country banger, and I feel like he's one of these guys he's trained with Leon Edwards. He's obviously been at a respectable gym here over in the UK, but he's never really wowed me. And then when I kind of look into the tape and I look into his record against other fighters, I noticed that he's 3-4 in the UFC. Which I was surprised about. I thought he had a winning record when he doesn't. And his 3 wins are over guys that all have losing records within the UFC. So 36 years old at this point. Obviously, he's kind of obviously on the decline as far as his age is concerned, especially at a lighter weight class. And he's mostly a kickboxer. He does have decent takedown defense, but he has shown in obviously previous fights that he does wear a lot of damage. When he fought against Bedoya in his last fight, very close decision. Bedoya is not even known to be a power puncher, and you could see a lot of the damage that Jai Herbert had on his face in that fight. He did get the win, but I do think that it was a much closer fight than people anticipated. And Bedoya is 0-3 in the UFC, whereas you take Taco Padilla, Chris Padilla, this guy's been nothing but a victory since he's coming into the UFC. The guy has been on an absolute run so far. Finishing most of his opponents, and he's looked very impressive. I like what he brings to the table, and the thing that I really like about him the most is he stays very calm under pressure. So when he gets hit with a shot, or he comes back to his corner, they stay very relaxed. They talk to each other in a very calm manner. Nothing seems panicked. Nothing seems rushed. He can mix in takedowns. He can grapple, which we saw in his UFC debut fight, taking the back and getting the rear naked choke. We saw in his last fight, he steps in with a really nice elbow on Rong Zhu, and he's able to I think it was like an orbital damage that he did to that guy's eye. His eye swelled up real bad. He was able to get doctor's stoppage TKO there. And I really like Chris Padilla in this matchup, and I'm going to make him my dog of the week. As guys, who are long-time listeners of the Ground and Pound podcast, they're aware that we had a 4-in-a-row streak, and unfortunately, Dubin broke it last week. But we're going to get right back on the train with Chris Padilla this week. I wish these fights were taking place on Tuesday, so it could be Taco Tuesday while Chris Padilla's fighting. But I think I like him wherever it goes here. I really like his pressure. I really like how composed he can be. I think he uses different weapons more as well. Jai Herbert tends to just box and throw the occasional kick, whereas Chris, I think he can really mix in the wrestling, really mix in the elbows, the knees, the calf kicks, everything. And like I said, he's the younger guy, dog of the week. And if this ends up being a close decision, I obviously don't like the fact that Jai Herbert's from the UK. I'm worried a little bit about that, but I don't think it'll get to the judges. I'm right there with you, Carlos. I think Padilla is going to get the finish, and he's going to upset the UK crowd, but he's going to make the Ground and Pound podcast a little bit of money this week. So going with Padilla. Mm-hmm. And next up, I think that brings us to the main card, and we've got Morgan Charrière, the Frenchman, taking on Nathaniel Wood, and all the Brits know. I think this is one that they may have circled on the matchup that they're really hoping that Nathaniel Wood can pull out for all of the Brits. They can't lose to a French guy in the UK, but Carlos, who do you have in this one? Think carefully.
I understand. Nathaniel Wood. I like watching him fight. He mixes everything in perfectly. I think wherever the fight's gonna end up, I think he's good to go. Whether it's on the ground in a scramble, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, any stand-up fighting, I think he's good. I just think that Charrière is a little bit more physical in all those departments. Like, I think that's the only thing that he brings to it is it's not that the size difference between those guys after weigh-ins is it just looks it looks different. Is he's a little longer and leaner. Is Wood. Is that's how his build looks. But then Charrière, like he just fills up those muscle bellies, and when someone's trying to take him down, you could tell he's got some strong hips. He's got strong striking, and he's comfortable on the ground as well. Probably not his best, but he's definitely good on the ground. I do see that he's very difficult as well to keep down. He's worked a lot on that, and he's gotten a lot better as well. I've seen some fights where he's had hard time getting up, and I've seen some fights where he can get up pretty easy. That's why I'm gonna take Charrière in this one. I understand where I'm at. This is enemy territory across the pond, but I am taking him. I do have respect for Nathaniel Wood. If it was, I don't know. I'm going to say if it was anyone other than Charrière, I'd probably go with him. But this is a pretty even matchup, and I just think Charrière is going to be a little bit more physical. He's going to out physical him right there, if that's a word. Out physical that guy.
So let me get this straight, Carlos. So after the Prime Minister of France said to you guys over there in the US, we want the Statue of Liberty back. This is how you repay. This is how you give back. You say, I'm picking Morgan Charrière on the Ground and Pound podcast. Okay, I see how it is. No, I'm actually.
I'm sure he doesn't even want to live there. I'm sure he wants to come over to England or the States. He can come over. That's fine. We'll take you. Apparently, we take everyone else too.
Yeah, that's another story for another day. But one thing I will say is, don't hate me, UK fans, but I'm gonna hate to do this, but I'm gonna pick Morgan Charrière as well. Unfortunately, I don't mess around when it comes to the picks. I don't mess around when it comes to betting on certain fighters and betting on fights. I just go with who I think's going to win, and unfortunately, I do think Morgan Charrière is going to win in this fight. I'm going to be rooting for Nathaniel Wood. Don't think I'm necessarily going to bet on Morgan Charrière because I think that if this fight's close, I think they might give it to Nathaniel Wood just because he's the hometown guy. And I think the crowd's obviously going to be very much behind Nathaniel in this fight. He's more of a boxer grappler, Nathaniel Wood. He does throw the odd low kick and occasional high kick, but he really likes to mix in takedowns and grapple. But the issue I have with him is I feel like he's very undersized for 145. Like he's one of those guys where I don't think he has to cut much weight to get to 145. Whereas, like Carlos said, Morgan Charrière is an absolute tank when it comes to, well, he's a French croissant in terms of the muscle bellies, like Carlos said. But he's very, very, very physical, very big for the weight class, really, really hard to get to the ground, great takedown defense. Right when you kind of shoot, sloppy like Chepe did in Chepe Mariscal in their last fight, which a lot of people thought Morgan Charrière actually won that fight against Chepe Mariscal. Morgan Charrière demonstrated that he's got great front chokes. He's tough, he's durable. I've seen him go 5 rounds before, former Cage Warrior featherweight champ, I believe it was. Yeah, the guy's pretty impressive if I'm being honest, and he throws everything with power as well. Like he doesn't necessarily have a great amount of volume, but he throws head kicks, he throws body kicks. He's very, very well rounded and still only 29 years old as well, which is kind of surprising. I feel like he's been around a long time. He's got 30 professional fights. So unfortunately, I'm going to go with Charrière here. The thing that really made me decide on that was purely because Nathaniel Wood in his last fight when he fought against Daniel Pineda. He wasn't able to get Daniel Pineda out of there, and everybody finishes Daniel Pineda. That guy just retired. He's not necessarily that good, and you weren't even able to finish him. And I believe that might have even been in the UK as well. So the fact that you're getting the hometown rub and you have all the advantages and you're not able to finish a guy like Pineda kind of worries me when you're about to fight Morgan Charrière because that guy's the real deal. And when he fought Chepe Mariscal, he showed all of the levels to his game, and you could argue that he won that fight. So I'm going with Charrière, not super confident because I think that the judges could screw Charrière here, but I do think he is the better fighter, unfortunately. And I just think he's bigger and better, unfortunately. And next up, this is one that we're looking forward to. We got Jordan Vucenic taking on Chris Duncan, and I'm going to start kicking this one off just by letting Carlos know that the Scottish people are like our version of your Mexicans. So they say that Mexicans are obviously very tough, very durable people, very hardworking people. That's what the Scottish are over here in the UK. So does that influence your pick on who you're picking in this matchup, Carlos?
No, I mean if you're Scottish and you're tough, that just means you can take a good beating. Doesn't mean you can give one though. So didn't influence it one bit.
And who you got in this matchup?
in this matchup, I am going to have to take Mr. Vucenic because I do like this kid, Duncan. He is a tough kid, but he's also one of those guys where, you know, maybe he's going to start getting a little bit better with when he gets hurt, he's going to back off, try to clear the cobwebs, come back in with a different game plan. But right now, Jordan Vucenic is at that level where he's got very slick movements on the feet. His in and out distance, he just has good economy of movement. Small incremental moves on the ground. Like he has smash and pass jiu-jitsu that's old school. He has good top control. I I thought, like I said earlier, this fight with was it Kutateladze?
Yeah.
I thought that it was very close. He could have won that fight. Kutateladze's wrestling actually, made a difference in that, even though I still think Vucenic won that. On the feet, he peppered him with those punches, and I feel like he could see the openings. I think Chris Duncan's a tough kid, and I think if you hit him, he wants to come back, and after you get one on him, he wants to get two on you. The problem is, I think maybe he rushes in sometimes, and he gets caught with something else. And I've only seen that once, but I have seen him grow as a fighter. He's done some smart things where he'll throw some strikes, get you hurt, take you down. So he's evolving as well. And that's what I like the kid Duncan, and that's why this was a hard pick. It took me a while to get this, but it's like I said, for me, watching the video on Vucenic, it was the economy of movement. His in and out movement is very slick. His ground movement is what impressed me the most because when he's on top, he doesn't just try to make big movements to get from one side to the other. He has like old school jiu-jitsu. I really love that. It doesn't take a lot of energy to do. He doesn't make big movements, keeps his weight on you. And for a little guy to do that, I say to a little guy in those smaller weight classes, they're just not used to it. That's usually the heavyweight style. And the other thing that I like about the guy is he's fought a murderous row of fighters on their way up in Cage Warriors coming to the UFC. So I think he's ready to make a name for himself as well.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I'm going with Vucenic here as well. And Vucenic, like Carlos said, big pedigree over there in Cage Warriors. And I think that he's somebody that a lot of the UK fans are really kind of behind at the moment. I think out of a lot of the people who are over here that aren't in the UFC, he's probably one of the more popular fighters. So I think that the fact that he was signed to the UFC, I think a lot of UK fans are very much happy about that. Former Cage Warrior lightweight champion. He's beaten Morgan Charrière. I think whether you want to question that decision or not, I think that was a very controversial decision. I thought Charrière won that fight, but he was able to fight 5 rounds. He showed a good toughness, and I've just sat there and talked up how good Morgan Charrière is, and Jordan Vucenic was able to get a win over him. And the thing to me that I really notice about Jordan is that he shows improvements from fight to fight. When I first watched a few of his fights over in Cage Warriors, he seemed like mostly sort of a grapple, heavy attack in most of his fights, but his striking's improving. I think his hand speed and his athleticism's improving. Still only 29 years old, which I really like. And the thing that I really notice about him is when he's on the feet, he will keep it at kicking range and blast you with kicks, very similar to how Paddy would fight Bobby Green. Blasting the kicks. When his opponent gets frustrated and they come in, he lets his hands go. So he tries to basically use his kicks to set up his punches, which I like. And like I said, he's always improving. And I think now that he's fighting people in the UFC, I think he's only going to show more of the levels to his game. And like Carlos said, when he fought against Garam in that fight, he took that fight on 4 days' notice, and he dropped Garam in the first round, and that was a very close decision. So I think someone like Duncan, who, we've seen Duncan get dropped before, trains over at ATT, does have a good guillotine win over against Balaji Oki in his last fight, but I think he's not catching Jordan with any of that kind of crap. I think Jordan, wherever this fight goes, I think he's going to have the advantage. If he wants to keep it on the feet, I think he's going to be much faster. If he wants to take it to the ground, I think he's going to be the better grappler. And I'm sure Duncan over at ATT, I'm sure they've got him, prepared with American Top Team. They usually do a good job of giving fighters good game plans. But I think Jordan's better wherever this fight goes. And on top of that, he's got the UK crowd behind him. So I expect big things from Jordan. And I definitely think he wins in this matchup. I wouldn't even be surprised if he gets an early finish. And next up, the people's main event. Molly Meatball McCann taking on Alexia Thainara. And just before we do break this one down, I want to get Carlos's opinion. Just so everybody knows, Alexa, this is actually her UFC debut. She did fight over on Contender Series. So stepping in on short notice because Molly had a different opponent. So about a week short notice for Alexa. So do bear that in mind with the matchup. And yeah, we got Molly Meatball McCann, one of the I don't want to say hotter prospects because obviously she is kind of at the end, coming towards the end of her career, but big fan favorite over here in the UK, and her and Paddy are obviously very, very popular. And I just got to say up the Toffees, which all of the UK fans will know. She's a big Everton fan. So Carlos, I'm going to pass this one over to you. Who do you have in this matchup?
Well, who I had and now knowing a week's notice, I totally had to take that into consideration right now because Thainara here, she likes to her whole game plan is to be physical and aggressive. She likes to be in your face. And she is a little tank. And she's a bully. That's what she's trying to do in the ring. She's trying to bully you. And Molly gives you a lot of space in the ring. You know, she likes to be outside. She likes to use her boxing. And she has been known to be able to grapple, at least I've seen in one of her fights. She'd rather not, but she can. Now, Alexia here has also got a lot of victories by submission. So that's where I fall into if you go right at her, you take Molly down, you could probably sub her first or second round. Problem being is Thainara here, she comes in pretty blind for a takedown. She'll just rush you and throw a couple of swimming punches. And Molly's going to catch you on the way in. Does Molly have what it takes to hurt her? Is what the question for me is. And I'm like, if she doesn't have a long camp, if she's not in shape, if she's not ready to go, those punches are going to add up and it's going to slow the takedown process. So now, knowing exactly what I know, I'm going to have to say she's not ready to take Molly down. I think Molly's going to be moving. I think she's going to be boxing. I think Molly's got it.
You going with the meatball?
I'm going with the meatball.
Okay. I got to be honest. I'm worried. I'm worried as a Molly fan. Full camp, obviously, like Carlos said. So obviously, you got to feel good for her coming into this matchup that she's got a UFC debutante in front of her. But I will say, starting off with Alexia, she actually impressed me, and I got to admit, I talk a lot of shit on women's MMA. I talk a lot of shit on some of these women fighters and how poor they can be, but she actually impressed me. And the reason for that was because she pushes one hell of a pace. In her UFC Contender Series fight, she threw a ton of volume. She does wing punches, like Carlos said, but she is there for all 3 rounds. Like, she finished that fight and was like running and jogging around the cage, and she had tons of energy. She looked like she could fight another like 3 or 4 rounds. And the thing with her, like Carlos said, she is a grappler. Like, she does have more submission wins than KO or decision, but the way that she gets fights to the ground is usually she gets people backed up against the fence. She'll try body locks and trip takedowns. It's not usually like singles and doubles. And we have seen Molly taken down and submitted in the past, so that does worry me a little bit in this matchup. And you have to think that Alexia obviously is somebody who is training with Alexa Grasso over at Alexa Grasso's camp. She's one of her main training partners, so she knows that she's being tested against high-level UFC females. So we can expect good things from Alexia moving forward. As far as Molly McCann does tend to overthrow a little bit on punches, which I think will set up takedown for Alexia. If Molly can just stay composed, I think she can keep this on the feet. I think she's probably got the more physical advantages over Alexia. She throws, if Molly just throws straight shots while Alexia is throwing wild hooks, I think she can definitely find the chin in this matchup. But I wrote in my notes that I think ever since Molly had the 2 spinning elbow knockouts, and she kind of just fell in love with the knockout. And I think she overthrows and she kind of gets away from her game plans at times just because she wants to hunt for that knockout. And I also think as well, given the fact that she is running a restaurant over in Liverpool, that I think that she's kind of thinking more about what she wants to do after MMA now. So I personally believe, and this is just a hunch, that win or lose, she's probably going to retire. And My head says pick Alexia. My heart says pick Molly McCann. And I just gave a whole spiel about how I don't mess around, that I don't pick certain people based on, betting or whatever. I'm going to pick the meatball. I'm going with Molly McCann. Screw it. I just don't like picking UFC debuts. She's not proven, and I'm just gonna warn people. I'm not betting on Molly McCann, but I'm rooting for Molly McCann. Let's go, Molly. I want to see her get the win. Hopefully, she retires in front of her UK fans, and she goes out maybe on a spinning elbow knockout. So, and also as well, just to throw it in there as well. The Liverpool accent, the Scouser accent is one of my favorites, and sure, it's one of Carlos's favorites too. So let's fucking do it, Molly lad.
Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Kentucky Fried Chicken, lad.
I'm working on it. I am working on it.
And we have got next up in the third fight from the main event. We have Gunnar Nelson taking on Kevin the Trailblazer Holland, and I'm going to pass this one over to you. Who do you have in this matchup, and can we trust Kevin Holland, Carlos?
Well, I usually have a name underlined, ready to go, and right now I just realized that one was still blank, so it's going to be a.
Was it Kentucky Fried Chicken? Was that the name? That was the name you had written down?
No, I wish that was, because that makes it so much easier than making this one. So, we like Kevin Holland. Safe to say, he's a funny personality, and even in fights, like if he can catch you with one of those shots, he's going to put you out. Problem is he doesn't throw anything but lefts and rights, maybe a left hook here and there, overhand right. He doesn't throw kicks. He has black belt level jiu-jitsu. I can't remember who his instructor was. Unbelievable jiu-jitsu black belt. I remember he was getting ready to fight Anderson Silva, but name doesn't ring a bell right now. And so he's taught by quality jiu-jitsu black belts. He has very good jiu-jitsu. I've seen it against Tiago, who was that? Macheta.
Yeah.
And he was able to survive with his jiu-jitsu against him. Travis Lutter, that's who it is. And Travis Lutter was an animal. He was just too big for that weight class. But anyway, he can survive on the ground. Also, he can be very offensive on the ground. We've seen a submission from him before on the ground. He doesn't use that either. So I don't necessarily know which Kevin Holland's going to show up, and I wish you could tell me, but I know you have no clue which Holland's going to show up. But for some reason, I feel like Kevin Holland is not going to let this stupid little mustache guy beat him. And I don't even mean that in a bad way, because I like Gunnar Nelson. Like, he's not a fantastic style, but he's the type of guy he's going to dig into the ground, and he's going to bring his lunch pail to work, and you're going to have a war. Okay. He's very meat and potatoes. The problem is Kevin likes to play around. He likes to stay outside. He likes to dart in with a 1-2 and just play around. And I don't know if you can do that with Nelson, even though he hangs his hands low. He has such a wide stance. It'd be great to see Kevin exploit that and just rip his lead leg. It would be great to see Kevin throwing combinations and exploit the fact that his hands are near his nipples, because he has that karate style stance. And the openings are there. It's just, I don't know if Kevin's going to take it. And he's athletic enough to exploit it. He's fast enough to do so. He's long enough to reach him before he can reach him. And with said, I am going to go with Kevin Holland. And I feel Gunnar's going to take him down and probably get a submission. Okay? That's just a feeling. But now I'm thinking, is he going to get close enough to get Kevin Holland down? Hamzat did. So maybe he can. But the way he's got to take him down is get him up against the cage. And I don't think Kevin's going to allow him to just physically bully him. I don't think he can beat Kevin in the middle of the ring. Kevin, come on, man. Just give me another victory.
Apollo Creed once said, some people got to learn the hard way. Yeah. All right. And that's what it's like when you pick Kevin Holland to win in a fight. Okay. we all know it. We all been there. We've all seen it. Kevin seems to struggle with wrestlers. We've all seen it that he struggles with grapplers. People tend to take him down. You never know what Kevin we're going to get. And Carlos, he's right on and spot on when he said, when you pick on Kevin Holland or when you pick Kevin Holland, you never really know what you're going to get. And Gunnar Nelson, to me, obviously, he's very inactive. Not necessarily a big guy for 170. Stands 5'11", so as I said, not a huge frame, and mostly a grappler. Very, very high level in terms of his jiu-jitsu, though. The guy, I believe I want to say he's won gold at the Pan American Games or something like that twice. So very, very high level in terms of his jiu-jitsu, but to me, he doesn't have the grappling in terms of getting the fights to the ground. He likes to snuggle you up against the fence and try and get you down from there. And I can't believe I'm going to do this, but I'm picking Kevin Holland. I just see the holes there, like the karate stance from Gunnar Nelson. We've only ever really seen guys like Wonder Boy be able to get away with that, with the hands low and the kind of bouncy, wide stance. I just see the openings there for Kevin. Like Gunnar Nelson he's not that fast either. So it's just like one of those ones, like Carlos said, like, please, Kevin, like just do this. And I feel like he will, because he's lost his last 2. He's lost 4 of his last 5. He knows that he has to win fights in order for the UFC to continue to pay him the wages that he's on. He's obviously a fan favorite. He's obviously somebody that fights very regularly. You know that he's great for throwing on main cards, and prelims, and you know what you're going to get from him. They love to give him wrestlers, which makes no sense. Just give him some strikers, for the love of God. But I say all that to say I'm going to pick Kevin Holland. I think the openings are there. I'm not going to bet on Kevin Holland. I just think that he's going to have a little bit more success defending the takedowns against Gunnar, because he doesn't have the wrestling like other guys have in the past, and he doesn't have the size advantage in this matchup. And on top of that, the karate stance, he leaves his hands so low. So I can see Kevin being able to land that right hand that he was able to land against Joaquin Buckley in that fight. He was able to land a very straight piston-like right hand, and I could just see him landing that on Nelson. And don't get me wrong, this is going to be one of those fights where if Kevin wins, we're going to be like, oh yeah, Kevin's back, woo, trailblazer. And then if he loses, it's going to be because he got wrestled and taken down, and we're going to be like, why the fuck did we even pick Kevin Holland? He does this every time. So yeah, I'm picking Kevin. I really do like Kevin, but when it comes to picking him, it's so tough. And come on, Kevin, just get it done, man.
Kevin's got me so confused taking him. I'm like, I don't even know if he's going to make 170. I'm like, he may just be like, yeah, I didn't feel like it.
Yep.
Like, that's how confusing it is to pick Kevin Holland. You don't know if he took it serious enough to make weight or not. Who knows?
He's the definition of never let them know your next move. And as we move on to the co-main event, we have Carlos Ulberg taking on Jan Błachowicz. And I'm actually really excited to see this one. I've always been a fan of Black Jag. I think Carlos Ulberg, to me, is very skilled. 205, 34 years old, so not necessarily the youngest guy, but I think that's why they're obviously pushing him for high-ranked guys like Jan Błachowicz in this matchup. And he trains over at City Kickboxing. The guy himself is very, very, very skilled and very fast hands. He has a really nice check left hook. Trains with some really high-level strikers in Israel Adesanya, and has some decent takedown defense training at City Kickboxing. But he hasn't really been tested up until this point, and I think Jan is a big test for him. And as we know, Polish power, Jan Błachowicz, 42 years old at this point, which really surprised me when I was doing the graphics for this. I was surprised he was 42. I thought he was still only sort of late 30s, but 42, still fighting, still going strong. And one of the things that I do like about Jan is that he's demonstrated in the past that he's not afraid to mix things up. When he fought against Alex Pereira, he didn't hesitate to shoot takedowns. He knew where his bread was buttered. He knew Alex was the better striker, so he instantly went in for takedowns. When he fought against Israel Adesanya, he was fairly competitive on the feet, but he went right into the takedowns. He knew where his bread was buttered. And I'd be surprised here if he doesn't come out and look to wrestle against a guy like Carlos Ulberg, who has been knocking people out left and right, fast on the feet. I say all of that to say this. At the start of the week, I was fairly confident in Ulberg. I thought Ulberg was going to have such a speed advantage. Jan, 42, past it, whatever. Jan's proven people wrong time and time again. So I am going to pick Ulberg, but I am not confident in this pick. I think Jan is very, very live for wrestle fucking Ulberg for 3 rounds and potentially getting a submission at some point. which is crazy odds, which we're going to talk about on the betting show on Friday. If you guys keep your eyes peeled for the best bets video coming out on Friday. But I'm going to go with Carlos Ulberg. I love Jan. He's a really, really nice guy. If you've ever seen any of his interviews, super, super chill, super cool guy. Really cool Polish guy you'd love to get a beer with. But unfortunately, I'm going to go with Ulberg in this matchup just because I think speed kills. And some guys are just going to slow down at some point, especially at 42. So, but don't be surprised if Jan is able to pull it out with the wrestling. But who do you have in this one, Carlos?
Well, I know. Is it Ulberg? Yeah, Ulberg's he's probably not as strong as Pajeda when it comes to stopping the takedown. Because Błachowicz, every time he took Pajeda down, even when Pajeda got back up, he was the one winded out of the two of them. And that's happened a lot when Alex fights people. So it lets you know, like, there's a reason why they have a hard time taking him down. I feel that Ulberg possesses the exact same thing, not to the strength that Alex has, but I think just his athleticism and power, his strength alone, power, will allow him to keep this fight on the feet. So far, it's not that Ulberg's actually been improving. He's improved on one thing. He's athletic enough to keep the fight on the feet, and he's athletic enough to throw everything correctly. Um, he keeps the fight at his pace because he only engages when he's ready to. I don't know if Jan's going to blitz him, and I don't know if that's a good thing because in Ulberg's fights, he'll throw a check hook or he'll throw like a straight right, and then he's got somebody on Queer Street. And the problem is Jan's not fast. And I'm sure he could take a shot, and I'm sure he's still tough, and I'm sure he's still strong. But can he take those shots at 42?
Yeah.
And Ulberg's actually starting to get into a rhythm. Now, he did beat up Ankalaev's leg, and nobody's really done that to Ulberg, but I don't really think he's going to stand in one spot to allow you to do that. And with that said, that's the reason why I went with Ulberg. And like you said earlier, I like Błachowicz because he sounds like the type of guy that's just very down to earth. He loves the accomplishments that he's had in the UFC, but he sounds like someone that's not even in the UFC when you hear him in an interview. Like he probably never brings that up anywhere he goes.
Yeah.
That attitude is very admirable and it's very cool to be around, but I don't know if that helps you at 42 because you have to realize like he slowed down a lot even since he's got up to 205. His movements are very lumbering. He's not very light on his feet, and I get it. He's got Polish power. He's gonna have to try to pull it out to get. Is he the? He's not the underdog in this, is he?
Yeah, Jan is the underdog in this one. Yeah.
Jan's the underdog. Okay, I can see him being a slight dog, and that's based on just physical ability alone. Because I feel like mentally he's a better fighter. I just feel like physically Ulberg is going to capitalize and get the upper hand.
I do like the fact that Ulberg can fight on the outside, and with his speed, I do think that's definitely where he's going to look to be. I just feel like if he fights on the outside against Błachowicz, it's going to get him pressed up against the fence, which is going to open up takedowns for Błachowicz. So that's what's got me kind of stuck in this matchup. And I just wanted to say, just before we move on to the main event, hit that like and subscribe button. And I do have to correct Carlos on one thing. You said it's Polish power. It's actually legendary Polish power. It's not just Polish
This is
power.
correct.
Legendary Polish power. But no, I do like Jan. I wish him all the best. I think he's definitely got a lot of achievements, and arguably as well, there's some people sitting at home that think that he actually beat Ankalaev and he beat Alex Pereira. So technically, that's the former champion, the current champ that Jan had 2 close fights with. So maybe he pulls the upset, and he's the dog that ruins everybody's parlays this week. But we'll find out. And that brings us to the main event. Leon Rocky Edwards taking on Sean Brady, USA versus England. And this one, this one I got to admit, I mean, before we do break this one down, hit that like and subscribe button. Leon Rocky Edwards, man. I mean, I've been a fan of Leon for a while. He's not necessarily one of my favorite English fighters. I was more of a fan of Darren Till and, Michael Bisping and some of them. But he is very soft-spoken. He's not necessarily the most, vocal guy. He's not the type of person that's going to get on the mic and talk a bunch of shit. But had a 12-fight win streak, and he was able to get to the belt, which took him a long time. And he got to Bilal, and obviously he didn't get it done in that last fight. And Sean Brady looking to win the belt here at 17-1, trends out of Renzo Gracie in Philly, and fantastic grappler. And I'm really looking forward to this one. And Carlos, who do you have in this matchup?
Like I told you earlier, I'm looking for Leon to pull this out of the fire, because I feel that he's more impressive in the stand-up, number one. Number two, I feel that. So yeah, he had a hard time against Bilal Muhammad, and he had a hard time in the first and second match against Kamaru Usman. I don't feel that Brady is the wrestler that those two are. I feel that he's very good. I feel that he's probably very strong. You can't have a back like that and not be strong. The guy's built like a little tank at 170, packs on a lot of muscle at 170. But I feel that Edwards, he may be longer, but I feel like he's just as strong. He just doesn't look like the guy looks like he's got a turtle shell on his back. Let's just be real. Like, he can bear hug you and end a fight. And Brady, he looks like a gorilla. So it's very hard to think he can't get Edwards down, but for some reason I believe he can't. And if he can, I feel that Edwards can get back up easier than against Bilal, which he had little to no success, or against Usman. Usually after the first round, midway through the second, I don't know if people notice it, but Brady starts to lose the sting on a lot of his shots. He kind of just throws to keep you at a certain distance or to keep you within reaching distance. And he never really ups the ante after that. He doesn't throw anything too hard. And I think maybe that's a gas tank issue. Like, he doesn't like to hear that in interviews that I've heard from him. But what I see is that he's economizing his tank. And that's fine, because he wants to be very grapple heavy. And that's okay. But you have a guy like Leon who's going to set up strikes while you're trying to set up takedown. Leon's going to use knees. He's going to use elbows. He's going to use punches. He's going to use kicks. And he'll throw his kicks naked too. He doesn't have to mask them behind his striking, like, his punches. He can just throw a kick. He loves to throw naked kicks to the body. I just wish after he throws upstairs, he'll come back with like a left or a right to finish off when he throws those high kicks. But the combinations that he uses are perfect when he feels comfortable using it. And that's the other thing is Brady just going to be, like human crazy glue and just stay on him, keep him pressed up against the cage and make this a boring fight? Because I don't really think he can take him down. The problem is Leon's going to have to be able to push the pace to get the separation that he needs to get the opening. And I feel that he can. I don't think that the time is going to be an issue. I don't think it should have been an issue. Leon, I love you, brother, but you can't be a wanker and just say, I'm tired. It was 5:30 a.m. I understand you're a professional. You should have been training at that time. If anybody needed that excuse, it shouldn't be you. When someone pulls it out of the fire like that, that kick was amazing, and it's historic in UFC, but you can't say that 5:30 is a reason why I lost the fight. I need you to do that again. And I need you to bring that fire, and I need you to come at him and throw in combination. And I think you can get him out of there. But it's going to be tough. You're going to have to create the separation on your own. So I'm going Edwards. Not changing my mind.
Headshot dead. Headshot dead.
Headshot dead.
I I pondered on this one. I honestly thought about making Leon my dog of the week this week, but ended up going with Taco. And the reason for it is just because Leon has all the skills and all the potential to me to beat a lot of people. And the thing that really impressed me that I think a lot of people overlook, and Carlos is spot on with his breakdown. I agree with every part of it. And the one thing I do really like about Leon was when he actually struggled in one of his previous fights way back in his career. He got out wrestled in one of his fights, so he decided to pack up camp and go over to AKA over in the States to go and train with Khabib and all the Dagestani guys and really learn how to wrestle. And now he's able to take that skill set, and you see in fights, even in the Belal fight, he was able to reverse positions and out-grapple Kamaru, Usman in certain spots. And his grappling's very, very underrated, and I think that he's kind of being overlooked in this matchup. And to me, Brady is very, very untested still, because although Brady's one solo loss in the UFC is to Belal Muhammad, obviously the current champion, and rightfully so. Belal looked very impressive against Edwards. All of his other opponents that he's fought aren't necessarily that good. It's not a great resume of opponents. So this is a big step up for Sean Brady too, flying across the world. That eight hours plane ride is no joke. On top of that, you've got a guy hungry like Leon Edwards, who's just lost his belt, fighting in front of a UK crowd. That means Sean Brady's going to be on a different time zone. And to me, I think to be able to out-grapple Leon for 3 straight rounds and win a decision, I think is going to be tough. And to me, Sean Brady is more of a submission-style grappler in the sense that he's live for a submission. He's going to opportunistically grapple to look for submissions, but he's not necessarily the best wrestler. And the thing with Leon that he's proven to me time and time again is that when he lets his hands go, obviously he's a very slick striker, but he needs to let his hands go in this matchup, maybe throw less kicks so that he doesn't give Brady an opportunity to catch him and get him to the ground. Let his hands go and defend the takedowns, and I think Leon wins this matchup. I think as well, if it's close, I think they're going to look at the striking of Edwards compared to the grappling of Brady and probably give it in favor of Leon. Obviously, I'm conspiracy corner over here, so I'd rather be on the side of Edwards in that scenario. And I will touch upon the one thing that Carlos said about the 5:30 start time, and for the fight that Leon had against Belal is obviously it was the same for both fighters, so there's no excuse really there for Leon. But what I would say is it's definitely a negative factor that impacted the fighter's performance. I think it was terrible decision making on the UFC's part, and at the end of the day, Belal, I think, looked phenomenal in that fight. I think that's the best I've ever seen Belal look. He looked fantastic. So maybe it was just not Leon's night. Hopefully on Saturday it is his night. And I think that he's going to go right back to the well as far as defending takedowns and keeping it on the feet. If he lets his hands go, I like him here as an underdog. And hopefully he can pull it out of the fire, headshot dead on Saturday. And that's all we have time for on the Ground and Pound podcast. Hopefully you've enjoyed all of our breakdowns, all of our discussion here. What I do want to remind you guys is hit that like and subscribe button. A lot of you are watching the content but not hitting that like and subscribe button. Subscribe so you don't miss anything. And one thing that you do not want to miss is Friday we go over our best bets video. That's all of the best bets that I like for this upcoming UFC London card between these two. And we talk about, bets that can make some money in your wallet. Currently up 2 units so far in 2 events. And I really like a few plays on this board. I definitely think we can add to that total and bet some money in your guys' pockets. And UK, USA, we got it done. We can shake hands. We could be civil. We could talk a little bit of shit between me and Carlos. But ultimately, I think we're pretty much on the same side with a lot of these fights. And like I said, hit that like and subscribe button. Carlos, is there anything you want to say before we wrap things up?
I can't believe in the main event I picked the red code over the US. It's not like me to do so, but Leon's my guy. I think he's got it.
So he pulls it out of the fire.
That's all I
Saturday.
got. That's it. Just like you said, headshot, dead.
Absolutely, and that's like I said. I think that fight's going to be pretty close, but leave a like and a subscribe in the comments. Let us know who you have in the main event. Thank you guys for listening. See you guys next week, and check out our video on Friday. Peace.